You're 12 years old and sitting at the dinner table when your mother starts crying because you forgot to thank her for lunch. It's not a quiet cry, it's loud, dramatic, accompanied by accusations of ingratitude and everything she sacrificed. Your father rolls his eyes and leaves the room, leaving you there, frozen, with a piece of chicken still in your mouth. And you think, I messed it up again. But what you don't realize at that moment is that there's nothing wrong with you. The problem is that you're being raised by people who are still emotionally children. And when children raise children, something inside you needs to grow up too fast. Something that should never have grown up so early. You start noticing things that other children don't need to notice. Your mother's tone of voice when she wakes up tells you whether the day will be safe or if you need to stay small and quiet. Your father's expression when he comes home determines whether you can be yourself or if you need to be the perfect child, the mediator, the clown, the invisible one. You're 10 years old and you can already read adult moods like a meteorologist reads storm clouds. Little by little, you develop an amazing skill. You can sense emotional changes in other people even before they realize it. It's like having an internal radar that's always on, always scanning, always alert. Your friends complain about their parents, but you don't understand what they mean. For you, parents aren't solid figures holding up the world. They're unpredictable hurricanes that you learn to anticipate, avoid, or calm. And then something cruel happens. People start praising you, how mature you are for your age. What a responsible child. You're so easy to deal with, and you smile because you're finally doing something right. But inside, there's a child screaming that no one hears, a child who just wanted to be a child. You learn that your feelings are inconvenient. When you get sad, your mother gets even sadder, turning your pain into fuel for her drama. When you get angry, your father calls you ungrateful, reminding you of everything you have. When you're scared, they say you're too sensitive, so you stop feeling. Or rather, you learn to feel alone, silently, in the darkness of your room where no one can turn your emotions into yet another problem to be managed. You become fluent in a language that other children don't need to learn, the language of regulating other people's emotions. By age 13, you already know when to crack a joke to break the tension. You know when to disappear into your room. You know when to bring a school achievement to distract from your parents' fight. You know when to be your mother's confidant, listening to marital problems that no child should have to process. And here's what makes it so confusing. Sometimes they love you intensely, explosive, effusive love that makes you feel like the center of the universe. But this love comes with invisible conditions. You are loved when it's convenient, when it reflects well on them, when you don't demand too much, when you exist the way they need you to exist. You develop what psychologists call emotional hypervigilance. Your nervous system is constantly in survival mode, not because there is physical danger, but because there is emotional unpredictability. And for a child, parental emotional unpredictability is as threatening as a predator in the jungle. But before you understand why you still carry this in your body decades later, you need to see what this adaptation created within you. Because it wasn't just a phase, it was a complete reconfiguration of who you allowed yourself to be. Psychologist Lindsay Gibson has accurately named this phenomenon emotionally immature parents. They are not necessarily abusive parents in the traditional sense. Often they are people who genuinely love you. But love is not enough when it comes from someone who lacks the emotional capacity to be a parent. Emotionally immature parents operate at a childlike level of emotional development, even though they are chronologically adults. They have extreme difficulty regulating their own emotions, so they expect you to regulate them for them. They cannot tolerate emotional discomfort, so they learn not to create it. They see you as an extension of themselves, not as a separate person with their own needs. What happens in your brain during this process is devastating and fascinating. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for emotional regulation and planning, is forced to mature prematurely, while other critical areas of emotional development are frozen. It's like building the roof of a house before the walls. Technically, you have structure, but everything is misaligned. Your limbic system, where your emotions reside, learns that expressing authentic needs is dangerous. So, it develops such an efficient suppression system that you forget you have needs. It's not conscious repression. It's automatic disassociation from your own internal experiences. And here's the part that neuroscience reveals. Your brain literally rewires neural pathways to prioritize the emotions of others above your own. Bessel van der Kolk calls this loss of self. You didn't lose it because you were negligent. You sacrificed parts of yourself because it was that or loose attachment to the only people who should protect you. There are 4 main types of these parents, and you may have grown up with 1, 2, or a mix of all of them. The emotional parent, the one who lives on an emotional roller coaster and expects you to hold the safety bar for him. The passive parent, the one who is physically present but emotionally absent, who never protected you from the other parent because that would be too much work. The driven parent, obsessed with achievements, image, success, where you are only valued for your accomplishments. And the rejecting parent, who simply has no genuine interest in who you really are. You develop what Alice Miller called a false self. On the outside, you are the adaptable child, the one who doesn't cause trouble, the mature one, the one who understands. Inside, there is a child frozen in time, still waiting for someone to ask, "How are you?" Really, not how you think I should be. How are you really? But this inner child can't speak, because every time it has tried, it has been punished with indifference, invalidation, or worse, with the emotional collapse of its own father or mother. So she learned, my authentic emotional existence is a threat to my family's stability. And as you grow up, this doesn't magically disappear. In fact, it infiltrates every area of your adult life in ways you can't even name, because neural patterns formed in childhood don't come with an instruction manual. They just ... operate in your romantic relationships. You're drawn to emotionally unavailable people with frightening precision. Not because you're a masochist, but because familiarity disguises itself as compatibility. That person who is charming but never vulnerable, who adores you but only on their terms, who has emotional outbursts that you need to manage. Your nervous system recognizes this as love because that's how love has always been. You become an expert at loving people who can't love you back in a mature way. And worse, you feel strange, restless, bored with emotionally healthy people. Because healthy love is calm, and calm, for you, registers as disinterest. You were trained to equate intensity with intimacy, drama with connection, unpredictability with passion. You have a visceral fear of being too much or too heavy. So you become the person who always asks how the other person is doing, but deflects when asked about you. You listen for hours, but share crumbs. You are always available for other people's crises, but disappear when you have your own. You tolerate unacceptable behavior for an unbelievable amount of time. Plans cancelled. You understand. Constant criticism. You accept it, not prioritized. You don't want to be selfish. forgotten things important to you. You shouldn't care so much. And when it finally ends, you collapse alone, away from everyone. Because showing that you're broken would seem like manipulation. You have this strange contradiction. You yearn for deep intimacy but are terrified of being truly known. Because being known means being seen, and being seen means risking them. Seeing something in you that justifies abandonment. So, you get close to a certain point and then build invisible walls. You let the person into the living room, but never into the basement where your frightened inner child lives. But romantic relationships are only part of it. At work, you become the employee every manager loves and every therapist worries about. You take on responsibilities that aren't yours. You work overtime without asking for compensation. You stay in toxic environments because it's not that bad and others have worse. You don't negotiate salary because asking for more would seem ungrateful. You don't set boundaries because you don't want to be difficult to deal with. You absorb criticism like sponges and discard praise as if it were polite lies. And when you finally have a burnout, you feel guilty for not being able to handle it, not angry about what they made you endure. You have extreme difficulty recognizing your own skills. Even when everyone around you says you're exceptional, you're absolutely certain you're fooling everyone. It's not common imposter syndrome. It's deeper than that. It's the ingrained certainty that you don't have the right to occupy space, to succeed, to be recognized. And here's the cruelest part. You often choose work environments that replicate family dynamics. Volatile bosses, you know how to handle them. Colleagues who shift responsibility onto others. Who they it on. Organizational culture where you constantly need to prove your worth. You feel at home because it's familiar. And familiar, even when toxic, is less frightening than unfamiliar. In friendships, you're that amazing friend everyone loves having around. You remember birthdays, start conversations, ask genuine questions, offer unconditional support. But how many friends really know you? How many know what keeps you up at night? How many would you call in a real crisis? You collect functional friendships, but avoid true intimacy, because intimacy requires vulnerability. And vulnerability has been used against you so many times that your nervous system identifies it as danger. You have difficulty asking for help, so you suffer alone to the limit. And when someone notices you're not okay and asks, you smile and say, "I'm fine," with such conviction that even you almost believe it. But where this really destroys you is in your relationship with yourself. Alone, without an audience to perform for, without someone to take care of, without someone else's crisis to manage. You face a deafening emptiness. You don't know who you are when you're not being useful to someone. You have such a cruel, inner critical voice that you would never speak like that to your worst enemy, but to yourself. It's the default tone. You're pathetic. You're exaggerating. Others have real problems. You should be grateful. What's wrong with you? You have an absurd difficulty relaxing, resting, doing nothing. Because doing nothing means you're not being productive. And not being productive means you have no value. So you fill every second with tasks, projects, helping someone, anything that keeps you away from encountering your own company. You oscillate between two extremes: compulsive hyper-responsibility and total collapse. There is no middle ground. Either you're holding up the whole world or you're lying on the bathroom floor unable to brush your teeth. And each collapse comes with brutal shame, confirming your core belief. I am weak. I am flawed. I am not enough. You have functional alexithymia, difficulty identifying and naming your own emotions. Someone asks how you feel, and you genuinely don't know. Sad, tired, angry. Everything seems like a shapeless gray fog. Here are the contradictions you carry in your body. You are incredibly empathetic with others, but brutal with yourself. You perceive the needs of others before they do themselves, but are dissociated from your own. You tolerate mistreatment from others, but are merciless with your own mistakes. You can calm anyone down, but live in constant inner turmoil. You yearn to be seen, but hide when truly looked at. You want to rest, but punish yourself when you stop. You rationally know you deserve love, but can't believe it emotionally. You preach compassion for everyone, except yourself. You are always prepared for abandonment, so you sabotage yourself before being sabotaged. You crave intimacy, but you build walls called independence. You help everyone, but you don't let anyone help you. You are surrounded by people, but profoundly alone. And the most painful, you love your parents, but you carry deep wounds they caused. And these two truths coexist within you, creating a guilt you don't know how to process. But perhaps the most confusing part of all this is the secret desire you carry and never admit aloud. You want to have a complete breakdown and have someone simply hold you. Don't try to fix it. Don't give advice. Don't minimize it. Just hold you and say, I know. I see. You don't need to be strong right now. You fantasize about someone who notices you're not okay without you having to perform a cry for help. Someone who sees through the I'm fine mask and simply doesn't accept that answer. Someone who says, I'm not leaving. It can fall apart. It can be a mess. I'll stay. You want permission to be selfish, to think of yourself first without sounding a siren of guilt in your chest, to say no without elaborating justifications or apologizing, to exist without needing to win yourself over. And deep down, so buried it hurts to touch. You want your parent, not the real ones, the ones you have, but the ones you needed to have. Parents who saw you as a whole person, not as an extension of themselves, who regulated their own emotions instead of asking you to regulate them, who made you feel safe to exist exactly as you are. But here is the truth that hurts and liberates at the same time. Those parents don't exist. They never existed. And you spent decades waiting for emotionally incapable people to magically become capable. You spent years waiting for validation from sources that cannot offer it. You placed your healing in the hands of people who caused the wounds. And now you are here, an adult, reading this. And something inside you is recognizing every word. And perhaps for the first time you are realizing it wasn't your fault. You weren't dramatic, overly sensitive, difficult to deal with, ungrateful, or anything else. They made you believe you were a child who needed emotionally mature parents, and you didn't have that. And that left scars. Deep scars that you carry to this day, disguised as personality, when in fact they are survival strategies that you no longer need to use. But before talking about what really heals, you need to stop believing for lies that keep you trapped. First lie: it wasn't that bad. Others had worse. It was bad. Emotional neglect is trauma. Parentification is abuse. Having to manage adult emotions as a child is a developmental violation. Yes, other people may have had worse, but pain is not a competition. Your pain is valid regardless of the pain of others. Second lie: but they did the best they could. Maybe yes, probably yes, but the best they could doesn't negate the impact on you. You can have compassion for their limitations and anger for what they did to you. These two things are not mutually exclusive. Furthermore, until you can feel healthy anger, you won't be able to achieve true compassion. It will only be appeasement. Third lie: I just need to understand why they were like that. You can spend a lifetime understanding, intellectually comprehending their difficult childhood, their traumas, their limitations, but rational understanding doesn't heal emotional wounds. You don't think your way out of it. You need to feel your way out. Fourth, lie. If I forgive, it will hurt less. Forced, premature forgiveness. Done because you should forgive. Doesn't heal anything. It only buries the wound deeper. You don't owe forgiveness to anyone, including your parents, and definitely not as a first step. First, you validate the pain. Then you process the anger. Then you grieve what you lost. And maybe, just maybe, in the end, forgiveness comes naturally or not. And both are valid. So what really heals this? It's not toxic positivity. It's not just get over it. It's not superficial cognitive therapy that tries to convince you to think differently. Bessel van der Kolk says, trauma isn't resolved in the head. It's resolved in the body. And he's right. What heals is witnessing your own story without trying to fix it immediately. It's sitting with a child you were and saying, you didn't deserve this. You needed more, and not receiving it wasn't your fault. It's crying for unmet needs without judging yourself for still having those needs. What heals is feeling the emotions you've suppressed for decades. And no, it won't be pretty. It will be messy, scary, overwhelming. You will feel anger that seems disproportionate, sadness that seems bottom, fear you didn't know you were carrying. But feeling is not the same as being consumed. Feeling with adequate support is processing. It's metabolizing experiences that have been trapped in your nervous system. What heals is you need to become the parent you needed to have, and this seems abstract until you start doing it. It's recognizing when you're hungry and eating, not because you have to, but because you deserve nourishment. It's going to sleep when you're tired, not when you've earned the right to rest. It's telling yourself you're doing the best you can, and that's enough, even when you don't fully believe it. It's developing an inner voice that counterbalances harsh criticism. It doesn't have to be forced positivity. It can just be, Pharaoh, you made a mistake, but you are not a mistake. You're struggling, and that's hard, not weakness. You deserve kindness, especially from yourself. And the first step to all of this begins with a question you've probably never seriously asked yourself. Not intellectually, but viscerally, allowing the answer to come from the body, not the head. What did I need as a child that I never received? Sit with that. Don't try to answer quickly. Let memories surface. Let emotions appear. Maybe it's simple. I needed someone to hug me when I was scared. Perhaps it's complex. I needed to exist without needing to earn my right to exist. And after you know the answer, ask the second question. How can I start giving that to myself today? Because here's the liberating and terrifying truth. No one is coming to save you. Your parents aren't going to wake up one day emotionally mature and apologize for everything. Your perfect partner isn't going to show up and heal all your wounds. No job, achievement, or external validation will fill the hole that inadequate parenting left. You are the someone you always have been. And that's not punishment. It's empowerment disguised as daunting responsibility. Signs that you are healing this. You notice the pattern of absorbing other people's emotions and consciously choose not to do it. You feel guilty when you set a boundary, but you set it anyway. You say, I'm not okay, and don't follow up with, but it's okay immediately afterward. You spend an entire day producing nothing and don't hate yourself for it. You let someone help you and don't feel indebted. You have a need and express it, even with trembling hands. You fail at something and don't use it as evidence of your fundamental inadequacy. You start choosing people who offer you consistency, not intensity. You notice when you're falling into an old pattern and stop before repeating it completely. You feel anger and recognize. This anger is information, not a character flaw. And one day, maybe years in the future, you have a moment where you fail at something, do something wrong, disappoint someone, and the first voice you hear isn't brutal criticism, but something gentler. Something that sounds almost like and you realized, I'm becoming the father I needed. Your emotional needs weren't the problem. The problem was that you needed to have a choice, that you learned to regulate emotions in your own time with support, not because family stability depended on it. The problem wasn't you being sensitive. It was you having to suppress sensitivity to survive. You didn't ask to be born into a family where you needed to be the emotional adult. You did the best a child could do. You adapted. You molded yourself. You sacrificed. You survived. But now you're no longer trying to survive. You're trying to live. And living requires you to let go of the armor the child had to wear. It requires vulnerability that you were trained to avoid. It requires trusting that you can have needs and not be abandoned for having them. Today, you can make a different choice. You can notice when you're automatically regulating someone's emotions and stop. You can say, I need space, without elaborating a TED Talk justifying it. You can look in the mirror and say, you're doing something incredibly brave, just trying to exist authentically after all. You were always the adult when you should have been the child. You were always the strong one when you needed to be supported. You were always the one who understood when you deserved to be understood. But now, for the first time, you can allow the child inside you to finally rest. You can say to her, it's over. You don't need to hold up the world anymore. You can finally, just be.